Hey yo, it's artificial.
It's artificial.
Hey yo, it's time for the show.
Time for the what?
Hey yo, it's artificial. Hey yo,
It's time for the show.
check the credentials, just the initials, hit like a missile.
To spark the mental, the illest audio, hottest visuals.
We elevate the culture with facts while bridging the gaps. Off the rip though, it's artificial.
Yo, so we were talking about the 90s, right? And kind of like you being a pioneer with this new album that you're bringing out or that you're coming out with or whatnot.
Yeah.
And so do you think that the 90s has really inspired today's culture?
Oh yeah, big time, man. Like, of course, like no question. You know, like from film to like the way that Spike Lee shot and just like that coming back around and just like it's so many different facets of the 90s that came back around, from fashion to like culture, the way that people talk, the way that people dress. It's all back, you know.
You think that's the hot vibe right now, is the 90s renaissance in current culture? Or
Yeah. I think it's trendy. It's definitely trendy, but at the same time, it's a lot of it's ingrained because the people who were kids like myself in the 90s, we saw that, and you repeat, as an adult, the things that you saw when you were a kid. So I think that's kind of like where I'm at. I love that stuff, man. Like,
so and if you look back at the 90s, you had all these really unique characters and artists, right?
Yeah.
So they kind of stood alone. Do you think today's music that's influenced by the 90s is kind of a blend of all that?
it's definitely influences of it. I think on the major scale, when you look at a lot of music today on a commercial level, it's kind of shifted into its own thing. There might be some influences, but I think it's shifted into its own like new kind of style of it.
There's a new sound.
There's a new
modern
sound of it. I wouldn't say it's like specific to the 90s, but there are influences
It
for
pulls
sure.
from the 90s.
It definitely a lot
Gotcha.
pulls from
Gotcha.
the 90s. When you have people like Dave East, you have Kendrick Lamar, all those people, like, they have styles that, originate. If it wasn't for what happened in the 90s,
Yeah.
they wouldn't be who they are.
But there's a modern
There's
kind
a
of
modern
twist
take
to
to
it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so take us back down, you growing up in the 90s and you like now getting familiar with music at a young age in the 90s. What was that like for you?
Oh man, I mean, for me, I guess introduction to a lot of that stuff was through my brother. I had an older brother, and I would listen to the stuff that he would listen to, like Boyz II Men, like like Lauryn Hill, like all those things became my influences too, because that's what I heard in the house, and I love that stuff too. At the same time, can you repeat your question so I make sure I answer? it thoroughly?
I just want to go down like the yellow brick road of like, how you started like in music. I mean,
Yeah.
that was kind of like the 90s era during that time when you're like developing and getting things into the 2000s, of course. But, just kind of give us that understanding.
Yeah, man. I mean, so like I said, like a lot of those influences, it kind of made me like, man, this music is amazing. How could you sit down and create this? Like, this is inspired, because I also listened to a lot of music from the 70s and the 50s and the 40s, because I listened to what my dad was listening to, and I listened to what my brother was listening to, and I listened to what my peers at school were listening to. So I have all these blends of different like inspirations. So I'm like, how do you create all these different styles of music? How were you able to do that? So like the 90s music was just recorded on tape. Music was on tape. But at the time when I was being inspired by it, I was creating it on a computer, which was a completely different process. So I'll have a completely different result when I'm creating. So it's like, how do I take this inspiration from the way that they recorded it, which was mostly live instrumentation with some keyboards, to I'm creating this all on the computer, like on Fruity Loops. Like, how do I take that inspiration and create it into something new? And that's kind of like how I started making my, falling into my own style of music. Because you take all these influences, you put them inside of the computer, and it comes out in a different way. It's processed a different way,
Maybe it's a little less organic than
A
it
little
was
less
before,
organic.
right? So
Yeah.
for me, going from, I started on cassette. We take two cassettes and a dual deck. We dub a beat, put the beat into the first one, put another clean tape in the next one, and then we'd rhyme over it. And that was before we used 4-tracks and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So, but once I got to the computer days, it was like, it changed the way at first, like you just, like what your kind of workflow is, right? Totally but
Right.
there's a lot of advantages to it. Though.
Because like my very first like recording experiences, I had like a boombox and I had like a handheld tape recorder, right? So I would record, like I would beat on the desk and I record it on the boombox, and then I would then play that back and record it on the handheld.
So you lived through that too.
I
man.
did,
Okay,
but just like kind of trying to figure it out myself. Like it wasn't even like based on the theory. It was just like out of necessity. And then so that was my experience. So what I would have to come up with would be based on what I had, you know? It wasn't like I can record 140 tracks and just like
or get your sounds on.
Exactly. Everything had to be valuable. Everything that I did had to be valuable. Like just a few different ways I can record it. So that influenced the way that the music sounded, or how many sounds, or the simplicity of the music was, you know? And that's the style. It turns into a style.
Yeah. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing right now? Like as far as, you know, simplicity being like an asset back then, and now where we have, you know, different sites where we can, you know, grab sounds from, and you know, we have, as you said, you can have over like unlimited tracks now, you know what I mean? And so
I think right now it's just so open because, like, you know, you have so many people that have access to be able to create music, create film, create fashion. But I think that a lot of times the things that win are the most simple, especially because there's so many different like pieces of content coming from so many different places. When it's too complex and it's hard to like grasp, people aren't able to gravitate towards it. When it's simple, but it's a great idea and it's executed well, I feel like people are able to swallow and to like, you know, digest things easier. So that being said, I feel like the simplicity, like even going back to just like having the boombox and the handheld tape recorder, like the simple idea of it all. If you're able to execute that, even if you have maximum resources, if you're able to like execute the simplicity of it, people are able to understand it better.
Yeah.
Or even if you have a complex production and it sounds simple, it seems simple, and you make it look easy, it's easier to grasp.
Yeah.
So I think it's a benefit. I think it's a benefit having simple ideas executed well. I think it's a benefit, you know?
Yeah. So speaking of simplicity and winning, your album is very simplistic, but it's also winning. You know what I mean? I got to listen to it. I got that private,
God bless.
You know, that was amazing. Can you go into that? Just like, and what inspired that? You talked a little bit about like Dangerous album, a little bit like having
Michael
like
Jackson Dangerous?
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. So the next project. So all right. So I think of everything that I do, especially like we're talking about the 90s. I love taking from the past, and like I said, I listen to music and watch films from the 70s, the 50s, 60s, all from the past, and I always think about taking from there and what's going to happen in the future, and then trying to merge all the present, the future, and the past together, because that's timelessness, man. You can listen to that 40 years from now, or you can go in a time machine and hear it, you know, 70 years ago and be like, whoa, this still has some kind of through line. So I think that, those influences, like the Michael Jackson Dangerous album, that album for me it's one of the least talked about from Michael, which is crazy to me because that music is so crazy. It inspired me so much. Maybe it was because I was a kid when I got it and it just blew my mind, but the rhythms and the sound selection and just like the classicness of it all, just like.
So are you saying that's an album that continues to inspire you?
Continues to inspire me to this day. I go back and listen to Who Is It? Like Keep It in the Closet. Those songs right there, like just the stories of them and the rhythms and like everything is so percussive and the sounds just still sound futuristic even to this day, like 2019. I believe that album came out in had to be like 91, 92, something like that. And it still sounds futuristic because it's simple. The ideas are simple, but it's just executed in a way that, you know, it's different than what you would expect if you sat down and had those ideas. So Michael Jackson, Teddy Riley did an amazing job just like taking what, you know, Michael came to him with and just bringing it to a crazy level. Just like, yeah.
Tell us about that process in your, you know, like in your discovery of your album. You know what I mean? Like, how did you lay the foundation and the groundwork for, you know, for your album? So
this is a part of a series which I don't even talk about that much, but Premonitions, which was my last project I put out, and Nostalgia, which is the next project. Excuse me, vice versa. Nostalgia is the project I put out 2 years ago, and Premonitions is the album I'm about to put out soon. Those are part of a 2-part series, which is Premonitions is about the past, and Premonitions is about the future, and Nostalgia is about the past. And I lie right in the middle of them, because I think about, you know, what we say to ourselves on a daily basis in terms of Premonitions, which is the next project. What we say to ourselves on a daily basis is so important, and that predicts the future. Like what we say and what we tell ourselves inside our head predicts the future, right? Okay. So with Premonitions, one of the songs is called Get Right, and it's just talking about right now is the first time and the last time that we're ever gonna get right now. So that's being in the present, which you have no choice about because we're always in the present, but seeing the future.
Unless you're thinking about the past. But are you saying like positive affirmations strengthen your mind so you can focus on the things you want to achieve? Is that kind of what you're saying? Through
That's absolutely what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And, you know, I said, I can see the future. I don't need a crystal ball. I had a premonition that we shall recover all. Like everything that we lost, if we tell ourselves that we're going to get back to that place and farther, you know, that's what's going to happen. If we tell ourselves that, it's it for me, I mean, then that's what's exactly what's
You're
going to
accepting
happen.
mediocrity, and it's just going to be that way.
I actually say settle for a mediocre, that's a never. I was on the court at 6 a.m. working on my jump shot with my pops. He said, you got to get right.
Ooh,
like,
okay.
That's exactly what I'm talking about in that song. It's just like, it's so important that we put in those habits mentally and put in those habits like actually with our actual actions to predict the future, to orchestrate what's going to happen in our future. We're not in control of everything, and that's just a fact.
Yeah.
But we're in control of our actions, and those things, those actions and those habits dictate what happens in the future. So that's what I kind of wanted to put out into the universe, and I feel like it was an important message. And that's what Premonitions is about. While, Six got talk, but I don't want to get too preachy. But I just want to say the things that I feel like it's important for everybody, like youth, people who are 70 years old, across the board, like themes that will help everybody to, manage their lifestyles, So
you're trying to inspire and uplift in that album.
That's exactly what I'm trying to do. That's what I do. Like, I'm a son of a minister, and I always felt it was important for us to talk to each other and to like uplift each other.
Yeah.
But I have my own way of ministering, and then the messaging in my music is exactly how I do that.
It's through your music, which this album is infused with 90s inspiration, right?
Big time.
I know that's a big part of who you are, obviously.
It's a big time of who I am, for sure.
But this one specifically, you go a little deeper on that vibe.
Well, actually, to be quite honest, Nostalgia is definitely way more 90s inspired, because Nostalgia was about the past.
Going back. Gotcha.
Whereas Premonitions has 90s influence, because like a lot of things that I do is just like, I mean, you see Carl Kanai.
Okay.
Just the Carl Kanai jersey.
You see the pony shoes.
Pony
Okay.
shoes, product of New York. I'm from Miami, actually from Broward County. It's a lot of it is inspired by the 90s, because I love that. I love the fashion. I love the culture. Yeah. But also just like there's so many different sides to me that I just want to reveal to the world. And it's I feel like that's in the 90s spirit, to just be free and kind of like rebel against what's going on right now. And I feel like I'm just trying to push the envelope farther, just for everybody in music and culture and fashion and all of those things. So I'm very excited to reveal these next 7 songs.
Let's go.
Coming soon.
And Premonitions, it's exciting, man.
I'm excited for you, man.
We're stoked.
It's about to be a movie, bro. Trust me. I can't wait I have these visuals that I've shot over the past few months. And
you've already shot visuals for it?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, nice.
Definitely.
Ahead of the game.
Definitely. 2020 is going to be a one to remember, for sure.
One to look for that Marc Lo, man. So where can we find you? Where can we find some of your Instagram? Like, just give us all your
I'll find you.
Oh, there it goes. He'll find you. Let's go.
No.
Actually, that's the first time I heard that. I like that, actually.
No. You can find me at The Real Marc Lo on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Black Planet, MySpace.
Black Planet.
You had to put that in there.
Okay.
No. Definitely check me out on social services. I talk to people. I like to have, build relationships with people. So, hit me up. It's all good.
Let's go get that Black Planet. Thanks, Marc Lo, man. It's great having you on the show. My guy.
Marc Lo in the building. ArtOfficial for show.
Appreciate y'all boys, man.
Yeah.